Hey, welcome to Socialism for All. It's July 16, 2025, and a couple weeks ago we did 3 videos in a row on Democratic Party candidate for New York City Mayor Zohran Mamdani. In those videos, we urged caution to people getting overly excited about this campaign, as it is being run within the 1% controlled, genocidal, imperialist Democratic Party, which helped to build the U.S. imperialist system as we know it today, which has been called the graveyard of social movements in the U.S. for decades, and which functions to stifle any class-independent organizing that might be going on, by which workers otherwise could gain an influence and power. There are a lot of areas in the country where maybe the only kind of organized activity going on is through something like DSA, but we've always cautioned people, if you do get involved in something like that, to be aware of and to combat the opportunism that is known in that organization, as its right wing will try to tail and to rehabilitate the Democratic Party. And that is one of Mamdani's main stated goals, to make the Democratic Party the kind of Democratic Party people can believe in and be proud to be a member of, and that fights for workers and all kinds of crap that it's never going to do. What it will do is waste your time and lead the opposition into a dead end. So this Mamdani campaign is actually a good example of what we've been cautioning people to fight against, to vote against, in terms of pursuing as a strategy for gaining worker power if questions related to this come up in an organization where you have any kind of say. As communists, we of course want to steer things in the direction of anti-imperialism and proletarian internationalism and independent working class power, which again the Democratic Party just is not. And today we have a follow-up, thanks to a viewer for sending this New York Times article in. The headline is Zohran Mamdani expands campaign team hiring veteran Democrat. Mr. Mamdani, a state assemblyman and the Democratic nominee for mayor of New York City, is taking on a small handful of more experienced campaign hands. And what is described in the article is that he is taking people who have been political directors for the DNC and Obama advisors into his team. So integrating with the Democratic Party. Really, what else would you expect from somebody running in the Democratic Party for an important mayoral seat? So the article by Nicholas Fandos is dated July 9, and it reads, Zohran Mamdani powered his way to an upset in the Democratic primary for mayor of New York City with the help of a small clutch of loyalists. Now, as he turns to the general election, he is taking the first steps to expand his orbit. Mr. Mamdani will announce on Wednesday that he has hired Jeffrey Lerner, a former political director of the Democratic National Committee and senior Senate aide, to serve as his new communications director. Mr. Lerner, 47, also once worked for Mr. Mamdani's primary rival, former Governor Andrew M. Cuomo. Andrew Epstein, who had been overseeing both news and social media for the campaign, will shift into a new role as its creative director, overseeing a team producing the kind of viral narrative videos that helped catapult Mr. Mamdani past his opponents in the primary. Deandra Khan, a top operative at Local 32BJ SEIU, also recently joined the campaign's political operation. Quote, "We are growing, we are maturing as a campaign," Mr. Epstein, 38, said, indicating that more hires were expected in the coming weeks. The selections could be especially consequential for Mr. Mamdani, a 33-year-old state lawmaker, who is still trying to assure segments of his own party that he is prepared to lead the nation's largest city. He also has to win an unusually volatile general election against Mayor Eric Adams, an independent, and others including Mr. Cuomo, who is considering a third-party challenge. Mr. Lerner, a Democratic campaign veteran, was most recently a managing director at Actum, a political consulting and lobbying firm. And I'll add there that he's gone back and forth between Democratic Party politics and those kinds of PR firms. Another one that he was employed at in 2013 is DKC. Continuing, in the Obama White House and at the DNC, he worked closely with Patrick Gaspard, a senior party official who has played a growing role advising Mr. Mamdani. And I will add, Gaspard was also the U.S. ambassador to South Africa from 2013 to 2016, the president of the Center for American Progress, and the president of the George Soros-founded Open Society Foundations. Going back to the article, Mr. Lerner, who lives in Washington, said he had reached out to the campaign to offer his services after Mr. Mamdani's primary victory. He said that the candidate had, quote, reshaped the political conversation in New York City and indeed the nation, unquote, and called him, quote, New York City's most savvy socialist. He served as Mr. Cuomo's communication director in 2007 during Mr. Cuomo's first year as New York's Attorney General. In an interview, he said accounts of his former boss's abrasive style were accurate in his experience and suggested he would talk more about that in the future. quote, "I learned a lot about him as a prosecutor, a politician, and person. At this time, I have nothing to add to the wealth of reporting that accurately captures what it's like to work for Andrew Cuomo," unquote. In a statement, Mr. Mamdani said that the new aide, quote, "shares our values and our commitment to make our city a place that is affordable and livable," unquote. And that's the end of the article. So while you could say that these people are maybe among the more progressive that the Democratic Party has to offer, that doesn't mean much. Ultimately, as capitalism inevitably progresses into deeper crisis and goes into its death throes, the Democratic Party is going to be there trying to defend capital every step of the way. And historically, what we've seen in countries around the world is that social democrats of this type are part of those defenses. And for people who are just fixated on winning elections rather than building influence and community organizing, for a longer haul struggle against all of the institutions of capital and organizations, including the Democratic Party, the task of separating out from the Democratic Party and going up against it may seem too difficult, too daunting, but it's what we actually have to do if we want to take control of the future for our class and create a society beyond what capitalism can offer, which from this point on is just going to be decay, fascism, and war. The Democrats will talk about that fascism sometimes, but they can't fundamentally do anything about it. They are, in fact, in on it, and they've been helping to shape and to maintain and to sell the far-right consensus of the entire 21st century in the United States, starting with 9/11, the war on terror, the complete reshaping of society to be a surveillance state, foreign imperialism and war. I mean, you name it. They are part of that. They are not anti-fascist. They are fascist collaborating to fascist themselves. So again, you just cannot leave the leadership up to that party. Even if you get one individual in that party who you think you like, despite not really knowing that much about him, he is working within a party that is going to be influencing him at every step. And we're going to continue this conversation about the Democratic Party because it's an issue that the US left has to come to terms with. And just to tease it now, there is an article in Jacobin titled "Shoykat Chakrabarty Wants to Remake the Democratic Party." This is a guy who was a co-founder of Justice Democrats and Brand New Congress, also formerly involved with the Bernie Sanders presidential campaign, and he's going to be talking about challenging Nancy Pelosi for her seat in Congress in a really lengthy interview that I'd like to walk people through, because to me, this vision that he has, which he calls the Mission for America, is the quintessential US social fascist nightmare, aiming in its own words to save US capitalism yet again, to be like a second FDR and, well, to remake the Democratic Party. Just all of the stuff that is counterproductive, not in our interest, will not advance humanity to the next level of historical progress. So that's coming up next time when we continue this discussion. Otherwise, thanks for listening, and thanks to the current patrons and Buy Me a Coffee supporters whose names are on the screen. If you'd like to get your name on the screen, head to patreon.com/socialismforall or buymeacoffee.com/socialismforall. Thanks again, and we'll see you in the next video.